Okay, we will start the lecture soon, so please turn on your camera. Okay. Today we will start the last two topic of our lecture. The first would be the introduction to information system development, and we will discuss further topics on the next lecture. So, let me share the screen. Okay. So the level of this topic in system development and system analysis is introduction, and you will find this topic again later when you take the management information system course, which is the continuation of the subject, and it will be studied in more detail when you take the systems analysis and design subject later after you pass the MIS course. Now, you probably already aware that environment, technology, competition, business are always change. Okay. We don't have a company like Gojek or Tokopedia 20 years ago. Recently, you are aware that Gojek and Tokopedia will be merged into a single company. Okay. For yourself, when you own a mobile phone for the first time, and then remember how many mobile phones you already have until now, how many times you change your mobile phone, either because your old mobile phone broken or it's no longer able to be used properly, or it's simply that you grew bored to your old mobile phone, you change that. And if you look at your mobile phone, the application always updated every time. So yeah, it's a change. Why it's changed? Because the environment changed. Everything around us are changing, so some of the system need to be changed as well. Take a look at the Gojek and Tokopedia merger. They need to merge their system eventually. So, for example, you can pay the transaction in Tokopedia using GoPay directly, and whatever transaction you have in Tokopedia will be translated into a point in Gojek, so on and so forth. So these are the need faced by business to change their system, to adapt to the new situation, to the new environment, adapt to new competitions, and so on. So why? Okay, sorry. Why companies need to change their system? First, to respond change in user need or business need. Remember when if you look at the banking industry, they changed from utilizing ATM and then internet banking and now mobile banking. Why? Because people need, their customer need that change. A lot of us currently conducting banking transaction without the need to visit a physical bank branch. In fact, if you look at the Niaga, in our campus, it used to be there's a small branch of CIMB Niaga Bank that they provide services for when the customer can visit the branch and conducting transaction like depositing money, with withdrawal money, making transfer, paying tuition fee and so on. But now they changed that 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. They changed that from fully functional branch into a digital lounge where the customer have to be the person who conducting the transaction. So the Niaga in our campus doesn't provide banking service anymore, like traditional banking service where you give the teller some form and the money and authorization to pay or something like that. But the customer do that all by themselves. Why? Because that's the need. Okay. To take advantage or respond to technology changes like what Gojek did in Indonesia with Ojek and also mobile phone. Okay. Before Gojek, the Ojek mode of transportation were notoriously known for overpriced. You know, they can charge you whatever they like, and some of them doesn't even know the place that you want to go. And then a few years after that, not a few years ago, there were Ojek that equipped with what do you call it, Argo meter, just like ordinary taxi. Okay, but still they did not utilize mobile phone. Gojek then see that opportunity. They use mobile phone for navigation, for payment, for ordering, and also for transaction. So that's taking advantage of the technology change to accommodate improvement in their business process. Gojek that used to be cash transaction, and then they become cashless transaction using GoPay, for example, to gain competitive advantage or lower cost. By using mobile phone, and obviously it will lower the cost of operation. Gojek doesn't need to buy motorcycle Argo meter anymore. They just need to develop an app and apply that app into mobile phone, and that's it. You have navigation, you have payment, you have transaction, you have ordering system, you have many other things. To increase productivity with lower cost, then you can use the other money that you have for other things that increase productivity. To accommodate growth, again, Gojek need to accommodate growth with the increase of customer and also driver. To accommodate downsizing or distribute decision making. It means that nowadays a lot of decision making can be automated. Like when you register for a class, the computer will check whether or not you fulfill the requirement of that or prerequisite for that subject. If it's satisfying all prerequisite, then you can enlist into that or enroll into that class. You don't need lecturer anymore. To integrate incompatible system, this is what Gojek and Tokopedia will do. Okay, to integrate both different system and to replace system that is aged and unstable. This is where my example previously about you replace your broken mobile phone or the mobile phone that could no longer serve your need. However, developing good quality software or system is difficult, expensive, and time consuming. Okay. There is a consulting company called Standish Group that they make a survey of major information system development project in the world, and then they report their survey result into a report that called Chaos Report. Chaos. Why it's called Chaos? Because that's the reality of information system development project. KPMG survey found that 35% of all major information system projects were classified as runaways. So, from the system development project in Standish Group report, the Chaos Report, I follow Standish Group report since 1995, and the latest version that I read was in 2015. So for 20 years, the results were surprisingly consistent. So from all information system development project in the world that they survey, only about 30% were succeed, about 20% failed, and about 50% classified as problematic, or in this slide it's called runaways. It means that first the completion time is longer than the plan. So it's supposed to be finished by a year, but then after a year it still hasn't finished. Second, budget overrun. It spent money more than the budget. Okay. And the third problem was incomplete. So the system is supposed to do 10 things, but at the end, after they finished, it could only do 6 things, 7 things. Okay. Why? Because the reason those system development project fail or problematic was because omitting basic system development steps, so doesn't follow proper system development steps, and also very poor project management. Okay. So we will discuss some of them now. We will discuss the number one here, especially the system development life cycle. The planning activities, it will be discussed in MIS, so I will not discuss it here. Feasibility analysis, I'll touch a bit, but it will be discussed more thoroughly in financial management subject. Behavioral aspect, I'll touch that a bit, and system analysis, it will be discussed thoroughly next week. So this is the methodology. This is the steps usually followed by system developer to develop a new system. Okay, it's called the SDLC, System Development Life Cycle. This is a quite old methodology. It has been around since 1970s, so it's older than me, obviously older than all of you. There are a lot of variants. In this variant, it has 5 steps, while I found another variant with 4 steps or even 7 steps, so different, but substantially they are similar. Okay. So the first stage of system development life cycle is system analysis, is to see first whether or not this organization need a new system, or if somebody or some department propose a new system, whether or not that proposal warrant new development, or is just proposal without merit. Okay, so this initial investigation, gathering information needed to buy or develop new system and determine whether it is priority. It's probably important, but it's not priority right now. And there will be many proposals to build a system in a company, but only selected few of this proposal could be executed because of limited resources and limited time. Okay. So, and the system survey, this is to, if the system proposal deemed as a priority, it's important to be executed, then the system survey will try to define the nature and scope of the project and identify the strength and weaknesses of the system. So basically, what kind of system you want to develop. This study involves in-depth study of the proposed system to determine whether it's feasible or not. We'll discuss that later in more detail. And then determination of information needs and system requirement. Okay, in business world, it will call system analysis, but in information, in computer science or informatics world, it will be called requirements engineering. So it's same, just different term. Delivery of system requirement. So this is reporting on what the system should look like. And then the conceptual design. This where the developer will try to create a conceptual design. Conceptual means it doesn't necessarily need to be a physical system. For example, does the system have web or mobile interface? Doesn't matter. How many users will use the system? Doesn't matter. It's not the part of conceptual. The conceptual focus more on what the system should do. Okay. So first, let's identify and evaluate design alternatives. There are 3 different alternatives for having new system. First, buying the system. Nowadays, a lot of companies, instead of building their own system, they tend to buy something that already in the market. Why? It's cheaper. Take a look at Microsoft Windows, for example, an operating system. First year, computer science or informatics students could build an operating system, but to build something as complicated and also as complete operating system like Windows, it requires time, money, and a lot of people. Okay, so say you buy Microsoft Windows 2 million rupiah. With 2 million rupiah, could you buy something like could you build or develop something like that? I don't think so. That's why buying is most of the time now is the cheaper alternative. Second, developing in-house. If you have human resource, you have money, you have time, you have expertise in-house, build it by yourself. This is a suitable alternative if your system that you want to build is so unique and also so secretive, confidential. It's only your company have the system. Need the system. So developing in-house is something that the best alternative. Third, you want to build the system. Nobody sell the system that you need, but you don't have expertise in-house. You don't have enough programmer. You don't have business. So what do you need? Outsource. You ask somebody else build that for you. Okay. And develop the design specification, what the system should be able to do and how it's be controlled, and then create a report and submit the report of conceptual design requirement. So that's why with the Microsoft Access and also the documentation, I often ask you to present your work, because that's actually what system developer did all the time. And physical design. Physical design, then you translate the conceptual design into physical system. Design output, report and forms, database, design the screen, and so on and so forth. Develop the software, develop procedures. So system is not just software, but also procedure on how to use the software. For example, your class registration system. If you remember the flowchart, before you be able to register to a class, you need to pay your tuition fee, your fixed tuition fee. So after you pay the fee, then you'll be able to register for a class. Okay, that's procedure. The SAN control, like password and also any other. This is to limit who can use the system and in what capacity. For example, you can enroll or cancel enrollment in a classroom, but you cannot add new class or expand the capacity of a class. Okay. The head of program, on the other hand, he or she could add new class or open new class or expand the capacity of a class or even cancel a class. But head of program could not enroll you into the class. That's control. And then develop system. So the finished system will be delivered. Okay. And then implementation and conversion. This is where the finished system go live. Okay. So you install any new hardware and software, you train personnel to use or to manage the system, test the system, and make any modification if there is any error or bugs, complete the documentation, convert from the old system to the new system, and deliver the finished, ready to use system. And then after the implementation and preparation finish, there is operation and maintenance. So the system running for daily usage. You monitor the system, make any adjustment that required, make a backup, for example, make maintenance, update the system if necessary, fix any problem, and so on and so forth. Then, eventually, the new system that has been finished and running become obsolete, and then the organization need to replace that with a newer system. Okay, so that's system development life cycle. Okay, so I will because like I said, it's supposed to be for MIS subject, so you will be having. Okay, so during the system analysis, a feasibility study or business case is prepared and is updated during the remaining step of the SDLC. The extent of feasibility study depends on the size and nature of the system. The bigger the system, the feasibility study would be more extensive, covering a lot of ground. Okay. So who conducting a feasibility study should be include management, accountants, system personnel, and users. So what's the result of feasibility study? There are three different decisions for as the result of feasibility. First, if the system proposal deemed as not feasible or infeasible, then the project should be terminated immediately because it's not feasible. Continuing that project will only harm the companies, financially at least. Okay. Second, the proposal of the new system deemed as feasible, so it could be proceed to the next step, okay, analysis and design. Third, proceed if specific problems are resolved. Okay, so let me give you this example. In 2007, a team of developers actually developing a new system for mobile phone. The system that we are now known as Android. So in 2007, a team of software developer actually developing Android. at that time, they were developing Android to be used on a mobile phone like BlackBerry. If you remember BlackBerry, there is a small screen and also physical keyboard, so no touch screen. Okay, so that's the model of Android in the first attempt. But then one day, this team watching the release or the launching of the first generation iPhone by Steve Jobs. It's all screen without any physical keyboard, and they only use touch screen and use virtual keyboard. So Andy Rubin, the developer of Android, decided that they should change Android from BlackBerry style devices to iPhone style devices. That's why this positive specific problem are resolved. That's Android is one of the examples. Okay. So there are 5 aspects for feasibility. First, technical aspect. Do we have the technology to do it? Okay. Is there any technology to do it? When I told you earlier about object with argometer, at that time, the most popular mobile phone was just ordinary mobile phone. It was not smartphone. You know, it's like Nokia 3510. So it's just dumb phone. Okay. So having a navigational system and also paying system like Gojek was not possible because the technology was not available at that time. Okay. But now, since we all of us have mobile phone, smart mobile phone, then the technology is able to be used for application like Gojek. Okay. Operational feasibility. Do we have people who can do it, and will it get used? Can our user use the new system? When I was working for the Ministry of Home Affairs, that's the most asked question, the most frequent asked question. So what we did was the survey team looking at all the people who use the old system and found out that they actually able to operate Facebook. Okay, they can use Facebook fluently without any problem. So we designed the system that should be as easy to use as Facebook. If it's as easy to use as Facebook, then we will have no problem. In organization, probably you don't have people who can operate that. So you might recruit new employee. Okay. Legal feasibility. Does it comply with legal, regulatory, and contractual obligation? For example, if you create a software or system for calculating income tax, does it have all the right tax rate? Does it have the right method to calculate income tax? If it's not, then legally it's not feasible. Scheduling feasibility, can it be done in time? For example, if you plan to have the system developed within a year, can you use the whole year in full, or should you take into account public holidays or any other disturbance, like for example in Bali, for example, Hindu people in Bali usually affiliated with their local temple. So apart from public holiday, the local temple will have celebration or religious rituals on certain days. And when that religious rituals being held, all the people affiliated with that temple will need time off from work. Okay, so it is not unusual for a company that operate in Bali to have employee A could not work on Monday, and then employee B could not work on Tuesday, on Wednesday, the other employee will have to be because that's a religious requirement. We could not prevent that, or we could not forbid that. Okay, but we need to take that into account. Okay, what about sickness, illness, or any other interruption? We should calculate that upfront in order for us to have a realistic schedule. Okay, that's include, believe it or not, if you scheduled a meeting and you estimated you need at least 1 hour, don't put 1 hour on the schedule. Put like 1.5 hours or 2 hours even. Why? Because you cannot go to a meeting, sit down and start the meeting immediately. No. You need like maybe 5 or 10 minutes to have social conversation, gossiping, asking how each other doing, discussing, small things, small talks, things like that. Although it seems trivial, it was needed. Okay. Believe it or not, some Indonesian traditional rituals actually solve a lot of problems. So a few years ago, there's a big company that implemented new warehouse system. Okay. When they started to implement this new warehouse system, there were chaos. Okay, product could not be sent. When they ready to have the product, the truck is not available. When the truck is available, the product is nowhere to be found. Things like that. So what's wrong? What happened? Apparently, the consultant that lead the implementation, they were foreigner, not Indonesian. So they did not start the implementation by having traditional Indonesian rituals, like you probably know in Javanese it's called selamatan, So basically what they did was just in the afternoon, sitting together in a room, having meals, discussing the project, and also having a little bit of prayer for the smoothness of the work. And after they did selamatan, the project went smoothly. Okay. And then lastly, this is the most used visibility is economic visibility. Basically, economic visibility will measure the cost and the benefit. The benefit should exceed the cost. If the cost exceeds benefit, then the project will be deemed as not visible. Okay, so in order to fulfill the economic visibility criteria, the benefit should exceed the cost. Okay, that's the problem. Okay, why? Because the cost on one hand, so this is the cost. Equipment cost, you need to buy new computer, you need to buy new desk, you need to buy new electronics devices. That's cost. You hire a programmer, you buy software, that's cost. You train your employee, the users, or you recruit new user, that's cost. Everything is cost, and it's clear from the beginning how much that you have to spend. However, with benefit, that's not as clear as cost. First, cost saving, obviously. For example, in the old system, a transaction will be processed in 5 minutes. With the new system, it only takes like 1 minute. So there will be 4 minutes saving. That 4 minute saving could be translated into rupiah with an ease. But how about this increase in job satisfaction and employee morale, because everything will be smoother, less error, faster, things like that's obviously increased job satisfaction. And nobody argued that was not a good thing. That was an excellent benefit. But how much is that? Because on the other hand, you have cost in rupiah. To compare cost and benefit, you need also to have benefit in rupiah. Increase job satisfaction? Yes, that's good thing, important. But how much is that in rupiah? Improve customer service. The customer become more satisfied. Is that a good thing? Obviously, that is important thing. But can it be translated into rupiah? That's very hard. Okay, so usually the benefit of new system having intangible benefit, but the cost is tangible. So it's like comparing apple and watermelon, okay, or apple and orange. It's not matched. It doesn't have the same measurement. So how to calculate economic feasibilities? There are many methods, but mostly it's about financial methods, and you will be learning that in financial management. Okay, so I will not this is something that I'm specialized actually. Behavioral aspect of change. Whenever you introduce new technology, it will create a change. For example, because of this pandemic, we were forced to conduct all the teaching and learning online. And that created a lot of changes, whether we like it or not. You could not discuss the class with your friend or your lecturer directly. The interaction is become less frequent, and so on. Take a look at another example. So when mobile phone become popular, a lot of people use mobile phone without considering the environment. A lot of people driving and calling with mobile phone, driving and texting, or driving and watching video from YouTube, and that's very dangerous if you are the driver, because it will make your concentration to the road decrease significantly. A lot of traffic accident was caused by the driver using mobile phone. Okay, that's just one example. But also change could be good, like for example with the internet, e-learning. Somebody from Indonesia could learn new skills from the US, so on and so forth. Last week on Thursday, our department having a seminar to celebrate our department anniversary. Previous anniversary celebration, always we did some seminars, but the attendance was less than 100. Last week, the people who registered for that seminar exceeding 3,000. 3,000 people registering for that seminar. If it's a physical seminar where the attendance have to be in the building, our campus will not be able to hold that much people, okay, for seminar. So that's another change, positive with the new technology. But either way, there is always change when you introduce new technology. Some people will see that change as a good thing. Some people will see that things as doubtful. They don't know whether it's good or bad. And other people will see that change as a bad thing. So they will tend to reject or resist to that changes. Okay. So in order to minimize the negative or adverse behavioral reaction, like rejecting the new system, we need to understand the personal characteristic and background. Okay. Young, highly educated, and comfortable with technology employee usually will embrace the new system faster than the old. But we could not dismiss the old employee who resist the new system because they still employ. Okay. In the early 90s, 80s, when many companies start to automate their system using computers, computerization means, or automatization means, that people will lose their job. Okay, so but that's not true. That's not supposed to happen. When our routine tedious job were taken over by system or by computers, that should give the human ability or chance to improve themselves. Okay. So, for example, when a welder, that company that usually weld components into a welding is a very dangerous job. With modern welder, you need a massive amount of electricity, and if there's something accident, the welder could be shocked by billion and billion million volt of electricity and could die instantly. Okay. So a lot of car company bring robots for it. So what's the welder? The person that used to be the welder, he or she could learn how to operate the robot. So instead of being a welder, they become the welder robot operator. Okay, so they increase their skill, they increase their competence, so they can have pay increase, raise in salary, things like that, and also they can work with better safety. Okay, so that's actually what technology is supposed to do. A minor in change was introduced. We need to involve the users or all the stakeholders from the beginning to understand the change, to introduce the change gradually instead of sudden. Okay. When we switch to full online learning because of this pandemic, a lot of people having difficulties with online learning. Why? Because it's sudden. Okay. The best way to introduce new technology like this is with gradual, and that's actually what our university did. When we were last year, when we were forced to change from traditional classroom to full online classroom, the university actually starting to gradually introducing online classroom. So at that time, I remember there was a letter from Pak Rector saying that all the lecturers need to include at least one online class from the whole semester and maximum of 4 online classes. But because of pandemic, minimum 1, maximum 4 become all of them. Okay, but that's not ideal condition. The best thing to introduce changes are gradually. Okay, with prior changes, if the experience was good, then the next change will be embraced better. But if the prior change were negative, then usually it will be at least cautious. Okay, and top management support. You know, if the top management doesn't support, then the staff would think, why bother? Okay, communication again, introducing the change gradually, able to discuss the changes, and also having bias and naturalization to change. Okay. And we also need to consider how much change caused by the new system. Disruptive nature of the change process usually will create negative feelings. Full online classroom last year was that. Okay, a lot of lecturers confused and also having negative feeling towards online classroom. Fear and losing jobs, okay, losing status, things like that. So that's our lecture today. Any question up to this point? Okay, if that's not, that's it for today. Okay, so if you have any question about your assignment, please let me know using Microsoft Teams. Otherwise, see you next week.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.